On the journey of every human life, suffering seems to be something that cannot be avoided. Sometimes it comes from unexpected losses, and sometimes it arises from quiet thoughts within the mind. But from the perspective of Buddhist wisdom, suffering is not an enemy that needs to be escaped. It is a doorway that opens to a deeper understanding of ourselves, of life, and of the path that leads to inner freedom. Welcome to Buddha's Wisdom Journey, a place where the ancient teachings of Buddhist wisdom are shared in a way that feels close, reflective, and deeply contemplative. This channel was created to bring stories, reflections, and perspectives that help people better understand the nature of suffering, the impermanence of life, and the path that leads to peace from within. In today's video, How to Face Suffering with Wisdom, we will explore how wisdom can transform suffering into a silent teacher. Instead of fighting it, instead of sinking into despair, we can learn to look directly at suffering with awareness and understanding, because sometimes in the most difficult moments of life, the seeds of growth and awakening begin to sprout. There are moments in life when a person suddenly pauses in the hurried flow of existence and asks, why does suffering exist? Why is it that even when we try to live well, try to stay away from negative things, we still have to face loss, disappointment, and wounds within the soul? Many people try to escape suffering by seeking busyness, seeking success, or seeking temporary pleasures. But the more they run away, the more suffering seems to quietly follow, like a shadow that never leaves the footsteps of a human being. In the modern world, people have more conveniences than ever before. Technology has advanced, life moves faster, and connections are greater. But paradoxically, inside the minds of many people, the weight has only grown heavier. Anxiety, stress, pressure, and a sense of emptiness are becoming familiar companions of this era. This leads many to believe that suffering is unfair, that it is something wrong, something that must be removed from life. But if we look more deeply, we will realize a very different truth. Suffering is not a mistake of life. It is a natural part of existence. It is like clouds passing across the sky. There are days when the sky is clear and blue, but there are also days when the sky is full of storms, and it is precisely through this change that human beings begin to learn to understand life more deeply. The ancient wisdom of Buddhism saw this thousands of years ago. Instead of teaching people to run away from suffering, that wisdom teaches something completely different. Learn to face suffering with understanding, because when a person looks directly at pain with a mindful mind, suffering is no longer an enemy. It becomes a teacher. Every sadness carries within it a lesson. Every loss contains an awakening, and sometimes the moments that seem darkest are exactly when the light of wisdom begins to appear. Most people, when they encounter suffering, react in two ways. One is to fight against it. The other is to sink into it. When people fight against suffering, they become tense, angry, and disappointed with life. They ask, why is this happening to me? And the more they ask, the heavier the mind becomes. But when they sink into suffering, they lose their inner strength. They begin to believe that life is only full of misfortune and that there is no hope. Both of these paths keep a person trapped. True wisdom lies in another path, the path of observation and understanding. When we begin to look at suffering with a quiet mind, we gradually realize that suffering does not come only from external circumstances. Much of human pain is created by the way the mind reacts to life. A word can hurt us not only because of the word itself, but because of the thoughts we create around it. A loss can make us suffer not only because of the event, but because of the deep attachment of the mind to what has already passed. For this reason, wisdom is not the ability to control the external world. Wisdom is the ability to understand how one's own mind works. When this is understood, people begin to look at suffering with different eyes. Instead of asking, "How can life be free from suffering?" they begin to ask a deeper question. How can my mind not be carried away by suffering? That is a very great transformation, because when the mind becomes clearer, suffering is no longer a wall blocking our path. It becomes a door. There are many people who only truly begin to understand life after passing through the most difficult periods. Losses, failures, and deep sorrows sometimes become the very things that awaken a person from the illusions they once clung to. And when that awakening happens, people begin to look at life with a new calmness. They no longer expect everything to be perfect. They no longer try to control everything that happens. Instead, they learn to live with the understanding that everything changes. Everything is impermanent, and every experience can become a part of growth. Suffering, when seen with wisdom, is no longer something to fear. It is simply a part of the human journey. In that journey, every person has the opportunity to discover a very deep strength within themselves, the strength of awareness, a strength that does not come from escaping life, but from understanding it. And when wisdom begins to grow within the mind, people will realize something very simple yet very profound. Sometimes what changes life is not the disappearance of suffering, but the way we learn to look at it. When speaking about suffering, most people tend to think that it comes from things that happen outside: losing a loved one, failure at work, betrayal in relationships, or unexpected events in life. These things certainly bring pain, but if we observe more deeply, we will realize that external events are only one part of the story. Most of the real pain is created within our own minds. Two people can go through the same event, yet their reactions can be completely different. One person may collapse, feel that life is unfair, and sink into despair, but another person, even while feeling sadness, can still remain calm and continue moving forward. The difference is not in the circumstances, but in the way their minds understand and receive what is happening. Wisdom begins at the moment a person realizes this. When we believe that suffering is entirely caused by the outside world, we will spend our whole lives trying to control everything around us. We want people to behave in the way we expect. We want events to unfold according to our plans. We want life to always be smooth and easy, but the reality of life is completely different. The world does not operate according to anyone's wishes. Everything is constantly changing, always uncertain, and sometimes completely beyond our control. It is this resistance to reality that creates so much suffering. When something unpleasant happens, the mind immediately begins to react. It judges, it compares, it regrets the past or worries about the future. These thoughts are like waves constantly rising in the mind, pulling a person into an emotional whirlpool from which they find it difficult to escape. But wisdom is not about suppressing those waves with force. Wisdom lies in learning how to observe them. When people begin to observe their own minds, They gradually realize that thoughts are only thoughts, emotions are only emotions. They come and go like clouds drifting across the sky, but because we often identify ourselves with our thoughts and emotions, whenever a painful feeling appears, we believe that we are that sadness. It is this identification that makes suffering deeper. When wisdom arises, a person begins to create a space between themselves and what is happening in the mind. They still feel sadness, but they are no longer completely carried away by it. They may still feel disappointment, but they no longer allow that disappointment to define their entire life. This small space is where wisdom begins to appear. Within that space, a person can look at their pain with curiosity instead of fear. They begin to ask deeper questions. Where is this pain coming from? What is it trying to tell me? And is there something in the way I see life that is making this pain larger? Sometimes suffering appears to reveal attachments that we had never noticed before. People often cling to things they believe will bring happiness, fame, money, recognition, or the stability of relationships. But because everything in life is impermanent, the things we cling to will eventually change. When that change happens, pain appears. But instead of seeing pain only as a loss, wisdom allows us to see another layer of meaning. It shows us that pain is revealing where we have placed too many expectations, where we have given too much power to external things. When this is seen, people begin to understand that inner freedom does not come from holding tightly to everything. It comes from learning how to loosen the grip. Letting go does not mean being indifferent to life. It does not mean stopping love or stopping effort. Letting go simply means understanding that everything has the nature of change, and true happiness cannot be built upon things that are always changing. When this understanding becomes deeper, a new kind of peace begins to appear in the mind. It is not a peace that comes from life becoming perfect. In reality, life still has ups and downs. There are still losses and challenges. But inside, the mind is no longer shaken as strongly as before. A wise person is not someone who no longer feels sadness. They still feel everything very deeply. But the difference is that they no longer see suffering as an enemy. They understand that suffering is a part of the journey of growth. It is like a fire that can burn, but it can also forge metal into something stronger. If we avoid that fire, we will never discover the true strength within ourselves. But if we pass through it with awareness, suffering can become a great source of wisdom. There are people who only truly awaken after going through the most difficult periods of their lives. Those very challenges cause them to begin asking questions about the meaning of life, about the nature of happiness, and about the path that leads to true peace. And sometimes, when they look back, they realize that the things they once saw as the darkest were actually the things that led them to the deepest understanding. That is the power of wisdom. Wisdom does not remove suffering from life, but it transforms the way people experience suffering. It turns an experience that seems to contain only pain into an opportunity to understand oneself, understand life, and open the door to inner freedom. And when wisdom begins to guide the way, suffering is no longer a dead end. It becomes a path, a quiet path that leads a person toward growth, awakening, and a peace deeper than anything the outside world can offer. In the journey of life, perhaps what confuses people the most is not the changes of the world, but the storms that take place within their own minds. When everything goes smoothly, people easily believe that they are in control of life. But when suffering appears, those illusions begin to shatter, and in those moments, a person stands before a very important choice. Either continue resisting life in exhaustion, or begin learning to understand it with wisdom. Suffering, no matter how difficult it is to accept, is still a part of the human journey. No one can live without ever tasting loss, without ever feeling lonely, or without ever going through periods when everything seems heavy. But what matters is not whether suffering appears or not. What matters is how we walk through it. When suffering arrives, most people want to escape from it as quickly as possible. They search for ways to forget it, to fill the emptiness with busyness, with entertainment, with new goals. But the more they try to avoid it, the more the pain sometimes quietly grows within the mind. It is like a call from within, reminding us that something deeper needs to be seen and understood. Wisdom does not require us to be strong in the way the world often defines strength. It does not require us to always appear fine or to constantly hide our wounds. Wisdom asks only one very simple yet very profound thing. Look at suffering with awareness. When we stop and truly look at our pain, something strange begins to happen. We realize that behind those chaotic emotions there is always a part of the mind that is quietly observing. That part of the mind does not judge, does not fear, and does not fall into despair. It simply recognizes everything that is happening. That is where true peace exists. Peace is not the state in which life becomes perfect. Peace is the ability to maintain inner stillness even while life continues to change. When a person touches that state, they begin to understand that happiness is not something that comes from outside. It comes from the way we understand and accept the nature of life. Life is always changing. Everything comes and goes. The things we cherish will also one day depart. The plans we build sometimes do not unfold as expected, but when this impermanence is understood, people no longer feel that they are fighting against life. Instead, they learn how to walk with it. At this point, suffering is no longer an enemy. It becomes a silent teacher. It teaches people to be more humble before life. It teaches people to appreciate the simple moments that they once took for granted. And most importantly, it teaches people to return to themselves, where true peace has always existed. There are people who spend their entire lives chasing things outside with the hope that one day they will feel complete, but at some point they realize that completeness does not lie in having more things, but in clearly understanding their own mind. When people understand their own minds, they begin to slow down. They are no longer carried away too quickly by worries about the future or regrets about the past. They begin to experience life more deeply. Every breath, every moment, every experience becomes meaningful. That is when suffering no longer frightens them, because they know that even in the most difficult periods, there is always a seed of wisdom waiting to be discovered. And when that seed begins to grow, it can transform the entire way a person sees life. If the reflections in today's video touch some part of your heart, if you have experienced difficult moments and are searching for a deeper way to look at life, share your thoughts in the comment section below. Every story, every experience can become a source of inspiration and empathy for others who are walking on the same journey. And if you feel that content like this brings you peace, reflection, and new perspectives about life. Take a moment to subscribe to the Buddha's Wisdom Journey channel, because the journey of discovering wisdom and awareness is not a path that must be walked alone. Every video on this channel is a small step in the journey of returning to a deeper understanding of the mind of suffering and of the path that leads to inner freedom. Here, we do not try to escape life, we learn to understand it, and sometimes just a moment of pause, a deep reflection, or a new perspective is enough to change the way we continue walking on our path. Because when wisdom begins to illuminate the mind, people realize that no matter how many ups and downs life has, there is always a peaceful place that no one can take away. That place is the awareness within each of us.